Razgaitis, CEO of Flow Water. Thanks so much for coming into Fox 26
Caroline,
today.
thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
We're so excited to talk water because it seems like we have a lot of water issues in our viewing area. We're covering stories of boil water alerts or brown water, and it's just a never-ending problem. Why do you think we have so many issues in highly developed urban areas in places like Houston?
Yeah, I know from a lot of the reading and the media reports, as well as a lot of the consumer experiences in Houston, it feels like it's specific to Houston. And there are a lot of issues that are specific to Houston, but it's really just a microcosm of what's happening all across the United States. And so I'll come back to that in a second. In Houston, for example, we've got a really rapidly growing city, aged infrastructure that's almost 70 years old. There's the East-West water plant that supplies about 70 to 80% of Houston's drinking water to its consumers and constituents that is almost 100 years old. And so when you have stuff that is that old, you have leaky pipes, and in those leaky pipes, you not only lose a lot of water, it becomes really inefficient. You get bad stuff that gets into your drinking water and your tap water, like heavy levels of calcium and iron and magnesium, and then a bunch of other dissolved solids. But what I was saying before is really a truism across the United States, which is this is just kind of a proxy or a microcosm of what's happening all across the United States with really aged infrastructure. And it's a huge problem that we've got to solve. And so we're seeing declining regulation, increasing contaminants in tap water, increasing pollutants that are being used in manufacturing, agriculture, pharmaceuticals, and those make their way into our drinking water stores. And this is why I believe that you can no longer trust drinking water anywhere in the US today. And you can go to ewg.org and just type in your zip code and see a partial list of the many contaminants that are in your drinking water. So this is an important issue. The vast majority of Americans chronically dehydrated, 70% of Americans are dehydrated. Then the water that they're drinking is actually really a chemical cocktail. So our company, Flow Water, is on a mission to solve that, but part of that mission is really just to educate people on what the issues are so that they can take control and take matters into their own hands.
And that's what you are doing Thursday at Discovery Green here in Houston?
It is, yeah. So we have a community-oriented event where we're just going to be raising the level of awareness of what actually is in your drinking water. And so the data is really interesting. About 70 to 80% of Americans, including Texans, and I know Texas always feels like it might have a little bit of a different tilt or experience than the other 49 states, but y'all in Texas feel about the exact same as everyone else does across the United States, which is that the vast majority of Americans don't like or don't trust their drinking water. And it's for a really good reason. And I'll give you an example of that. And these are some of the stats that we're going to be mentioning and sharing at Discovery Green with the community activation, where they can drink Houston tap water and they can also drink Flow Water and taste the difference between something that's actually been purified. But today in the US, there's over 50,000 chemicals in use. And those are used in manufacturing, in agriculture, there's herbicides, there's pesticides, microplastic, PFAS comes up in the news a lot. Fewer than 100 of those chemicals are actually regulated by the EPA and the Safe Drinking Water Act. So even if you solve the 94 chemicals that are in there that are in regulation, many of which are outside, our drinking water is outside regulation, there are still tens and tens of thousands of chemicals that aren't even regulated, aren't even on the roadmap. And those are chemicals that are literally turning our drinking water into a chemical cocktail. So my advocacy really is around policy reform. It's around building and rebuilding infrastructure, innovating around infrastructure, some regulatory, appropriate level of regulatory. Too much is too much, too little is too little. But then also consumers taking matters into their own hands. And we live in a world today where you have to treat your drinking water twice. Municipal does the best job they can to get that drinking water to you. But once it gets to your faucet, you need to find a way to filter that. And I can talk a little bit about that in order to drink it safely.
Well, when I was checking out Flow Water, is that something that you can have in your house? Is it accessible to people, or is this for...
I wish, and we're actually not here.
What is it?
It's actually a B2B product. So
okay.
Flow Water is this super potent purification device. So what we did about 12 years ago is used really current and modern day technology to solve today's problems. And so I was sharing with you these chemical contaminants that are all throughout drinking water everywhere across the United States, and especially and including in Houston. And what the Flow Water system is designed to do, and we spent millions of dollars developing this and a long period of time developing this, is it effectively purifies water and removes everything down to 0.0001 microns. So human hair is many microns wide. So just 0.0001 gives you an idea of how minute the particle size is that get removed from drinking water. And so we use a system like reverse osmosis called advanced osmosis. That's our proprietary system. We put flow waters into hotels, schools, gyms, corporations. It's a B2B product. So when we're here and when I'm talking to you today, we actually do not have today, someday we will, a flow water product for the home. We're really trying to just raise a level of awareness. Number one, 70% of Americans chronically dehydrated. Number two, the water that you're drinking out of the tap is literally a chemical cocktail. And so you need to filter that water. And there's a variety of different filters that we could talk about that consumers can use. And then finally, number three, drinking out of something that's wrapped in plastic is not the solution. So half of all bottled water actually is just tap water that's packaged and bottled, wrapped in plastic, shipped everywhere across the United States. And the problem with bottled water, there's many. One is it's sold at 1,000 times markup. But number two is when you're drinking your bottled water, you are literally drinking that plastic bottle. So the average American has 1 plastic spoon's worth of plastic in their brain, just in their brain. They're finding it in 100% of umbilical tissues, placenta, in your stomach. So in a water that's this size, either from the tap or especially in a bottle, has anywhere from 200 to 300 microplastics in it and hundreds of thousands of nanoplastics. And there's about 10,000 chemicals that go into the creation of plastics. And there's only 6,000 chemicals that go into the creation of cigarettes. So just to contextualize a little bit of the seriousness of this issue, both in drinking water out of the tap, as well as single-use plastic water bottles, which again means we're in a world where you just have to treat your water twice and you have to filter that at the point of dispense.
Okay, question here, and
Yes.
I don't know what your take will be, but I'm so confused when it comes to fluoride in water. I've
Right.
heard so many different things and so many different perspectives. And right, you go to the dentist and they ask you, like, do you want your teeth treated with fluoride? Like, I
Right.
thought fluoride was good. What's your perspective on that?
My perspective on fluoride is I think that fluoride, and I think the data is really clear that topical application of fluoride to the teeth is beneficial during your growing years. The problem with fluoride is forcing it to be in everyone's drinking water, number one, is a bit of an issue just as it relates to American culture, which is, having that be force-fed to people is issue number one, even though it's been the case for most of the last 50 years. But number two is it's really inefficient because the population that does seemingly benefit from fluoride and topical treatment are those that are kids and adolescents between the ages of 0 and 18. And once your bones stop growing, then there's no benefit to fluoride. And fluoride in high doses is a neurotoxin. So the fact that, I'm 51 years old drinking fluoride in my water, it's completely futile to do that. And there's a lot of...
Because when you filter water, wouldn't that filter out the fluoride along with all the other stuff that's in it?
It depends what kind of filter you use.
Okay.
So like filters are good. So there's like a carbon filter, ultrafiltration, nanofiltration, and that's like goes from like good to better. And then there's reverse osmosis, which is a membrane. Reverse osmosis is an incredibly potent, and it extracts the vast majority of pollutants, including fluoride. So, my personal perspective is, I think, I've got 2 daughters, they're 21 and 23. Big advocate of fluoride treatments topically into their teeth when they're growing. But as 21 and 23-year-old young women, I don't think they should be drinking fluoride in their water. This is something that you want to extract out of it. Like literally the best definition of water is the chemical composition of it, which is pure H2O. And that's what we need to have in our bodies.
But that's not what so many people are consuming out of their tap, pure
It's
H2O.
not.
There's a lot in there.
There is a lot in there. I mean, there's, and I'll just give you a few data points around that, if I can. In the last 5 years, about 56% of Americans have been drinking water, their tap water, with lead in it. About 70% of Americans have PFAS in their water. There's still no federal mandate around PFAS regulations and no EPA mandate and restrictions around PFAS regulations in drinking water. Here we are 50 years later, 5 Republican presidents, 4 Democratic ones. We have no federal mandate around lead testing. So you could be sending your kids to school and they could be drinking water with lead in it.
And that was the issue in Flint, Michigan, right?
It was. Actually, flow water, we had a small part very firsthand in Flint, Michigan, where we donated about $60,000 worth of flow water refill stations to the city of Flint during the height of the lead crisis. And then we actually had local people, constituents, take water samples from the tap as well as from flow water devices, send it off to a third-party lab. The lab data that was coming back showed that the drinking water coming out of the tap there was at 45 times the max EPA allowable limit for lead, 45 times. The water samples were so dark. I have photos of these that I'd be happy to send you. It looked like dark urine. It looked like someone that was really dehydrated urine. And out of that same water source, the water coming out of the flow water machine had undetectable levels of lead. And this is the same flow water system that we put into thousands of schools and thousands of businesses and thousands of hotels across the United States. It's really just an indication of why this is so important that you treat your water twice. And this is not a plug for flow water. And in fact, there's a lot of things and applications where we don't put flow water units. This is an advocacy around consumers taking matters into their own hands, doing what's best for their health and that of their family members. And I tend to think water and sleep are the two best things that you can dial in and get the greatest amount of ROI. And historically, we feel like we've always been able to trust the tap water, I think 20, 30, 40 years ago. And it's not until more recently where the data has really become crystal clear as to the issues with drinking water today and what we need to solve for. And that's where we've got to take matters into our own hands.
And on Thursday, will you be answering questions from the people who you'll be meeting with in Houston about their water, whatever they may want to ask you?
We will. So I'll be there personally from about 10 a.m. till noon. The event runs from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. at Discovery Green. It's right by the children's playground area. And you'll see a community-initiated event where you can sample flow water. You can also learn more about flow water at www.drinkflowwater.com, as well as water issues. As I mentioned before, if you're curious what's in your own backyard, literally your own backyard, go to ewg.org, and there's the tap water database where you can type in your zip code to learn more about some of the chemicals. It's not an all-inclusive comprehensive list, but it lists out some of the chemicals. You'll be shocked when you type in your zip code to see what's in your drinking water.
Oh my
but
gosh.
hopefully what it does is it propels you to actually do something and just simply install a filter or a reverse osmosis machine. And ultimately, as consumers, I feel like we're the ones, regulation doesn't drive dramatic change. I mean, consumers demanding, requesting, advocating for what they want for themselves, for their husbands, wives, kids, friends, and family. Those are the things where we put our dollars is what gets done. And so those are the things that we advocate for, and that's where we're trying to educate the public and bring them along.
Well, we're lucky to have relatively clean drinking water here in the United States, but a lot of work to be done and a lot that people can learn. So Raz, thanks so much for shedding light on this, and we appreciate your time.
Caroline, thank you.
Thanks.